It is day 30 of the federal government shutdown with no end in sight. We're going to talk about a Democrat Senate candidate's Nazi tattoo scandal and a new study highlighting why Democrats are having so many problems. All of that and more today on a special Halloween Eve edition of 10 Minute Drill.
Everybody get up, get up.
The story of America is the story of an adventure.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
We are a nation under God, and I believe God intended for us to be free.
With tomorrow being Halloween, first off, here is how my family celebrated Halloween this year. We are being zookeepers. My son is a lion and my other son is an elephant. But to the big news. Today is day 30 of the federal government shutdown, and as we have said every day, there is still no end in sight. Democrats are continuing to take heat over this. Here's CNN with an update on how poll numbers have shifted.
Yeah, you might think, given that the Republicans are in charge of both the House and the Senate, that a government shutdown might actually hurt the Republican brand. But in fact, it hasn't. If anything, it's been helped a little bit. The generic congressional ballot, which traditionally Democrats have done really well on, and if you look at this point back when Trump was president the first time around, Democrats are up 11 points. Look at where it is now. Democrats are ahead, but they're actually only up 3 points. This is, in fact, the worst position Democrats have been on in a generic ballot at this point in midterm when there was a Republican president in the last 20 years.
So while Republicans' approval ratings are going up despite the shutdown, Democrats are in their worst position on the congressional ballot in almost 10 years. What does that tell you? One thing that's contributing to this, as we have documented here on 10 Minute Drill, is the fact that Democrats have no strategy and no message. And so when they go on TV, they create terrible viral moments like this.
I'm not applauding their
by
tactics.
The White House.
Well,
this is a choice by the White House.
This
they
is
are
also,
choosing
Congresswoman,
to
this
cut
is
off
also a
food
choice
assistance.
by Senate Democrats
No,
to not
it is
vote to
not.
open the government.
That was New Mexico member Melanie Stansbury, who you never heard of before and you may never hear of again. Here is Sheldon Whitehouse, once again having a quiet part out loud moment.
Why are working families the leverage the Democrats need to get Obamacare fixed, to get the Republicans to fix Obamacare? Why is that the place you guys have to go that far?
It's the only lever we have.
That is corrupt Senator Sheldon Whitehouse saying that starving people is the only lever they have in this shutdown. Add that to the long list of Democrats saying the quiet part out loud, whether it's Chuck Schumer saying every day this gets better for us, or Katherine Clark from the House saying some families may get hurt, but that's a risk we're willing to take, or that is my paraphrase of it. But to put a cap on it, here's Chuck Schumer in a very testy exchange about this upcoming food stamp cliff.
We are saying the Republicans can fund it now, and they're using these people as hostages. Plain and simple. Next. That's the answer. The answer is they can fund it right now. Okay? Right now.
As you see and hear there, Chuck Schumer is struggling to defend Democrats' position. He's trying to argue Republicans are the ones holding food stamp recipients hostage, when in fact it's Democrats who have shut down the government and cut off those food stamps for people. And the other thing we talked about yesterday was the absurdity of Democrats suing the Trump administration to force them to circumvent Congress to release the funds for food stamps that are only able to be released in the case of an emergency and only with congressional approval. So once again, think about that entire arrangement. Democrats are suing the Trump administration to try and force them to circumvent congressional authority to get that food stamp money out instead of simply opening the government and letting that food stamp money come out immediately. It's sort of like locking yourself out of your house and then suing your neighbor for it, then realizing you had the keys in your pocket the entire time. This is such an absurd dynamic that we wanted to illustrate it with memes. And so we held a meme contest. I'm going to describe some of these for you listener audio only people to hear. First, the classic Padme and Anakin meme from Star Wars. Democrats say, we have a plan to save SNAP benefits. Padme, representing the SNAP recipients, says, so you're going to open the government? Democrats pause. SNAP recipients, so you're going to open the federal government, right? Another one, a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire meme. What are Democrats' options for ensuring the shutdown doesn't cut off food stamps for 42 million people? Reopen the government, end the shutdown, vote for a clean CR, or sue? And then, of course, the classic Paris Hilton meme, Dems to food stamp recipients, stop being poor. And then one of my favorites, the car driving along the freeway, veering off the road when the path straight ahead is vote to reopen the government, and they are skidding into sue. Ever since the 2024 election, every few months there's been a new study that comes out highlighting why Democrats have such major problems with the bulk of the American people. Semaphore previewed a new one of those. The group, called Welcome, consulted hundreds of thousands of voters over 6 months for its broad findings, including that 70% of voters think the Democratic Party is out of touch. Most voters, the group found, believe the party over-prioritizes issues like protecting the rights of LGBTQ+ Americans and fighting climate change, while not caring about securing the border or lowering the rate of crime. To highlight this point, we wanted to show you a side-by-side of the Democrat Party platform in 2012 versus 2024. See if you notice a difference. In 2012, today our economy is growing again. Al-Qaeda is weaker than at any point since 9/11. Our manufacturing sector is growing for the first time in more than a decade. But there's more we need to do, so we come together again to continue what we started. It's hopey-changey, it's Americana, it's even a little bit patriotic. Now let's fast forward to 2024. This is the first page of the 2024 Democrat Party platform. The Democratic National Committee wishes to acknowledge that we gather together to state our values on lands that have been stewarded through many centuries by the ancestors and descendants of tribal nations who have been here since time immemorial. So in 2012, they started with a patriotic call to Americans to unite. In 2024, they started with a land acknowledgement. Once again, the land acknowledgements don't necessarily even appeal to people who consider themselves to be Native Americans. They appeal to white liberals, which is Democrats' biggest problem here. But to highlight that one more time, I want to look at Zohran Mamdani, who next Tuesday will likely be elected the mayor of New York. His primary results. As you can see here, voters who make under $50,000 overwhelmingly voted against Mamdani, but voters above $50,000, including voters over $100,000, overwhelmingly voted for Mamdani. So when you look at demographic breakdown, Black and Hispanic voters overwhelmingly voted against Mamdani, who was carried overwhelmingly by white voters. So why is Mamdani a problem for Democrats? Because he doubles down on their shrinking coalition, which focuses more heavily on white, upper-class, wealthy liberals and leaves everyone else out in the cold. Last week it was reported that Maine Democrat Senate candidate Graham Plattner has a Nazi tattoo on his chest. This has created a firestorm of problems for Democrats, many of whom have hoped Graham Plattner might be the candidate who could finally unseat the Iron Lady Susan Collins up in Maine. This headline was particularly hilarious. From The Guardian, I am not a secret Nazi. Maine Democratic Senate candidate addresses tattoo. One challenge for Democrats in this is they have tried to downplay the Nazi tattoo. Here's Chris Murphy.
What you saw is what you think you saw. Elon Musk did the Heil Hitler salute. He did.
He sounds like a human being to me, a human being who made mistakes, recognizes them, and is very open about it.
So again, the hypocrisy here is a big challenge for Democrats. They spent weeks talking about Elon Musk because he did a motion that looked to them like a Nazi salute, even though he denied it, and I think it was pretty clear that he was throwing his heart out to people. But Graham Plattner's actual Nazi tattoo that he has acknowledged has Nazi ties, no big deal. I don't know how they explain that one. But again, Graham Plattner's story coming out is actually highlighting a much bigger problem for Democrats, where the establishment and Chuck Schumer and the Democrat Senatorial Committee are trying to get Janet Mills, the current governor of Maine, across the finish line. And so they are likely the ones who helped release and push this story about Plattner's Nazi tattoo. Last week, we talked about this major drug scam called 340B. Over the weekend, this got a lot of news attention again, when the head of cardiology at University of Miami Health went mega viral for posting this tweet. Just opened, UMiami Health Solemia Medical Center, the definition of first class. We are growing and growing. The problem here is this is a 340B hospital, which means it uses its nonprofit status to get major benefits that are subsidized by taxpayers. For example, they get drugs at a major discount, with the intention of selling them to low-income patients, but instead they sell them at full price, pocket that difference, and use it for things like insanely fancy and unnecessary hospital lobbies, or in cases like a news story out of Kansas, NIL agreements, which is where schools pay student athletes to participate in their athletic programs. We talked last week about how hospitals are using these 340B scam benefits for things like Super Bowl commercials, things like fancy facilities in for-profit operations. But now also we see a case where a university health system is using 340B dollars subsidized by taxpayers to pay their student athletes. This is a major scam that's going to continue to get more attention as Congress and states look at it. There's a new poll out that talks about whether or not Americans see climate change as a major cause for concern. This from the Daily Wire. Is the climate cult losing? A new poll shows it might be. The poll conducted by AP shows that only 38% of Americans would be willing to pay $1 a month to fight climate change, whereas back in 2021, 52% were willing to pay that $1, and in 2018, 57% were willing to pay to fight climate change. One thing we've talked about quite extensively here is in the 4 years of the Biden administration, they recentered the entire government and the entire US economy to fight climate change. And instead of actually changing the climate at all, a lot of Biden donors got incredibly wealthy. And so the urgency for fighting climate change has gone down quite a bit, as evidenced by an AP poll. For our You Can't Make It Up segment today, you'll have to forgive us for this, but we're going back to Karine Jean-Pierre because her book tour is a gold mine of content. She held an interview with the New Yorker's Isaac Chotiner. Now, Isaac Chotiner is well known for being a very tough interview. Most people who sit down with him come out looking pretty bad because he asks a lot of tough questions that usually will expose any kind of flaws in your thinking, logic, record, things like that. And Karine Jean-Pierre, as we have seen throughout this book tour and her entire career, already isn't really playing with a full deck. Here's one exchange I wanted to highlight while the entire interview is full of gold. Chotiner to KJP. One could conceivably think that he could do the job through January 2025, speaking of Joe Biden, but that it was not wise to think he could do the job through January 2029, right? KJP says, it's not my place to say. Chotiner says, what do you mean it's not your place to say? No, wait, I'm answering the question. I did not see anything that would cause me concern. That is my answer. Chotiner says, except the debate and the other things everyone saw? KJP, what I'm saying to you is the debate for me was one time. I had never seen him like that before. Now that's incredibly hard to believe, that the person who was staffed to be with Joe Biden all the time didn't see things that we've now heard literally thousands of sources say they saw and found troubling. Which again raises the question, is Karine Jean-Pierre just lying to everybody, or is she actually that delusional? We may never know. That is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us on 10 Minute Drill. Please have a happy Halloween. Like, subscribe, leave us a review, tell your friends. Have a great day.